you doing today?
Doing really great. Came off a day yesterday where I was feeling pretty ill and sickly. Got some good night rest, and I'm ready to go. Got a full shave here, clean. Looks like you're growing back your beard. What's that
Growing it
progress been
back.
like?
I do got to clean this up a little bit, but I am going full beard entering into the winter months because that snow beard is going to
The
be
snow
looking
beard.
pretty. The snow beard. People say I fluff it up. I put snow on it to make it look more extreme than it is. I will not.
Confirm or deny that?
Yeah, I do not confirm or deny that, but it's going to be in full effect, so I'm ready for that.
Yeah, I would do the same thing if I could grow it. I mean, it's been slowly but surely as I've started to age a bit more. I've noticed that my facial hair has started to grow in faster and a little bit thicker, just like my chest hair, but like not as much where I can actually display it. So I've been shaving it, hoping that works a little bit. I know it's like a wife's tale to shave it down more, but we'll see how it goes. I'd like to
Hey,
grow a full beard at some point.
worked for me in college, so there's hope. There's hope.
Nice, awesome.
I wanted to start with this quote: "We do what we love when what we love is what we win at." What does that mean to you?
Well, I think that that kind of has directed my interests and my decisions a lot in my life. I feel like I don't usually choose anything that I am not necessarily, bad at, but that I can't succeed eventually at and that I'm interested in. So I think that the quote, if you can't win, in my opinion, in a lot of things, um, I guess I wouldn't show up to, but I also find value in losing and learning from that too. So I guess what do you have to say on that?
Well, I just found it interesting. Um, I was listening to the Modern Wisdom Chris Williamson podcast, and he had the name is escaping me, but the guy who just won Mr. Olympia, and they were talking about this
Chris
idea.
Bumstead?
That could be right. I cannot confirm or
Okay.
deny that.
Okay.
Um, but they're just talking about this concept of finding your passion, finding what you love, and doing what you love every day. And that question was posed in my mind of like, do you and I love running for the sake of running? Yes, there's pieces of that. You
Hmm.
definitely have to have that foundation. But if we never won or found success in running, would we still love it and would we still pursue it?
Mm.
And so that's kind of like the deeper question around is like, yeah, I think ultimately it's trying to find that balance of like, I love running because of the benefits that I found early on in it. And then as I transformed in the sport and found success in other ways, like um, social media presence, like um, success during races and events. But I think more than anything is this like positive affirmation from friends, family, and peers that it's like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I'm getting positive feedback from. I'm going to continue to do it. And all of those things have fed into my continuation of it. And so it's kind of the lines of like, do I love running? I ask myself that a lot because a lot of times I'm like, no, I actually hate running. Like this sucks.
Yeah, I feel
So,
like it's a
so yeah,
mix of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation in some ways, where I do love the act of running. I do love doing it, but I'm extrinsically motivated by, what people have to say about my running, like what the results say about my running, um, what I want to get out of the running. So it's not exactly just intrinsic, in my opinion. And like I like when people call me crazy for what I do, or you're a psycho, like
yeah.
that you're doing all this stuff. But in some ways, like I also want people to understand me better too, because I feel like there's some parts of it that we all have in us that a lot of folks are just not tapping into, and I want to like use it as a way to encourage people to do the same, you know. So in some ways, like I want to win, but I also like want to be able to share it as I succeed, and I think that's like the best way to do it because people people like to see you learn. They like to see you be injured and come back from it, but in a lot of cases, like that doesn't really that doesn't really how do I put this? That doesn't really keep people's attention. I feel like people are, at least myself. I don't want to speak for people. I don't want to speak for people, but I like to see videos of people succeeding
Mm.
and winning and that motivates me. And it also motivates me to see people come back from injuries and losing. But if you don't see people succeeding and doing well, it's hard for me to picture myself in that position as well and to put the same steps that they put in place to do the same. I'm not sure if that makes me a follower in some ways or not, but I think that it's cool to see people trailblaze and then see that and try to blaze your own trail off that in some ways. And
Can
I
you
think that's like we all do in some way or another.
can you say more about the part you talked about? Was like you like to see people succeed.
Hmm.
What what does success look like for you?
I think success looks like going through with your goals and meeting them.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be a big goal, it doesn't have to be something that is outrageous. But in a lot of cases, I like when people put big goals on themselves and they dedicate themselves for long periods of time and it ends up working out and they earned what they deserve to earn.
Mm.
Which is like I think kind of goes into like finding what you love, and it's a long process. And I think it's essential for you to set goals for yourself that seem outlandish at first. Like one of my goals is to become a professional ultra runner, which it's super outlandish right now, especially with the landscape. I feel like it's very rare for an athlete coming from the background that I do, that wasn't a runner previously, that doesn't have D1 college running experience to make this path and to get to the spot that I want to be in, where I'm competing at the highest level. I know that there's some athletes that have done it, so it's not out of the question at all. One of which is Jonathan Ray. I know that he played baseball in college at some level, like myself. But I want to I want to play the long game here and set this goal and go for it. And eventually, I can see myself succeeding and inspiring a lot of people. And I know that right now I am, but it's like a lot of people call you crazy until you do it. And until I, become a professional or am running on these big stages, I don't think a lot of people will understand exactly what it took. And maybe they won't. But for me, like I'll be satisfied with knowing like I I won and I'm winning and I'm succeeding in what I set out a while ago to do, and
Mm.
I'm continuing doing and following through with. So I think a lot of it goes back to just following through with what you say, and a lot of times in my life, like I can honestly say I'm not good at that. I don't follow through with a lot of things I say, but one thing's for certain, like I'm following through with this, and I'm continuing to do it. I've been doing it for the past 2 years, and the trajectory I'm on leads me to believe like that I have momentum and that I'm on the right path. So,
I think that follow through is the the key thread there that not just you and I can relate to, but people listening can relate to no matter where they're at. I was making some videos on TikTok the other day after seeing finishers of the Chicago
mhm.
Marathon, and it was this article about the final finishers of the marathon, not necessarily the winners of the marathon, and it was people that were coming in just before that 6 hour cutoff time. And then it talked about people that were coming in well after that 6 hour cutoff time. There's people that were coming in like 5 to 6 hours after the 6 hour cutoff time. And that's something that I was speaking to, and I think can speak to anybody who's listening to this, is like, if you set a massive goal like running your first marathon, and maybe you're a bigger body person, or you've never run before, the fact that you set the goal and you were committed to the very end, no matter the circumstance, that's what success is.
That
and
is.
I just think that, like, you're right, that the bigger goals you can set for yourself, the better off you're going to be, because it's going to put you in a position where you're going to have to change fundamentally in order to get to that goal. And everyone's goals, your goal of becoming a professional ultra runner, and the goals that lay underneath that are going to be much different than someone who's like, I'm just struggling to run 3 miles, you know?
Yeah.
But that commitment to see it through, that is what success is. And that's what it sounds like you're talking about.
Exactly. And then in that process, you love it and you nurture it, and you want to continue. Like, the more you get yourself into it, the more I feel like your hunger grows to win more and to like succeed and to complete those goals, because you're involving yourself more, you're dedicating yourself more, you're sacrificing more, and with that you feel more, not necessarily pressure, but more obligated to succeed and follow through. So I think it helps, like, doing the little things consistently, day in, day out, continues to stack and like puts you more into it, but also gets you so much closer, not just because you've been completing your goals, but because you want it so much more. Like, it's like a peak. Like, you just want it so much more at the
Yeah.
top. So
So, on that note, because this was another topic that they discussed in that podcast, was the hardship of finding success is that when you find it, that now becomes your new bare minimum,
yeah,
where it's no, like, you have to constantly evolve. Like, what is have you felt that, where you're like, wow, I hit this and now this is what's expected of me? Maybe even not from an
yeah,
external point, but from an internal baseline. You're like, wow, I accomplished this. Now I know I'm capable of this. So anything less of this is me falling short of something I know I'm capable of.
yes, definitely. And it's something that's resonating with me with hardcore right now. Coming off my third place finish at Grindstone, I now feel this obligation to myself to succeed just as much in my next race. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the exact place, but it needs to be a position that I feel almost translates to that, and even better than that, because I have time in between those races to better myself. But when it comes down to it, the races are so different. The distance is different. The terrain's different. The competition at this next race I'm doing, Black Canyon 100K, is going to be immensely deep. It's going to be insane. Usually it's the most competitive 100K on U.S. soil all year. So the top 10 racers are usually all sponsored athletes. Even the top 15, 20 are all sponsored athletes with deals that have all this that I want to shoot for. So, like, yes, I definitely feel like that I've had some success and I've qualified for UTMB, that I need to show up at this next start line better than I was before, and even better than I can even imagine, because I'm going to have to put myself out there to even feel what I felt at the last race now. There's gonna be a lot more effort that has to go into it to feel what I felt at the last race. It's not gonna be. I'm not gonna be able to train the same. I'm not gonna be able to put in the same effort to
Right.
get the same result that I think I am. I'm gonna have to put a lot more in, and I might finish 50th. I might finish 100th place, but knowing that I like did all I could and that I executed, most importantly, I think will be the biggest things in my success there. So yeah, I've definitely felt that. Have you felt that with what you've done with your projects lately? With your running across Michigan to Canada, your beer miles. Like, when you do a beer mile, like, how do you feel when you don't PR or you don't beat someone? Like, do you feel like you haven't succeeded entirely, or What does that look like
Yeah.
for you in your mind?
Yeah. It's it is a strange. It's strange for me because I try and, you know, playing sports in college, I would get so upset over losing, like it was detrimental. I remember after we lost my junior year to Mary Hardin Baylor in football in the playoffs, I had the score of that game as the background to my phone. And
Hmm.
so it was just all I thought about and it was all consuming. And it was not healthy. Reflecting back, it was just not something that I should have focused so much on was the result. I should have focused more on the process. Um, but I remember this specifically after I lost to Dolan Smits in my first beer mile race on my journey to Windsor. And I remember losing, knowing that the time that I lost, I think I ran like a 6:20. He ran a 6:15. And my best was up until that point was like a 6 minute beer mile or 5:59. And so I knew that if I raced that better and pushed a little harder, I would have won. And I was beating myself up over it so badly. And then I tried to, then I thought about it more, and I'm like, well, this is a really cool experience. I got to meet someone. I got to meet someone who was in a similar position or is in a similar position to where I was years ago when I was playing college sports. So there was this like opportunity to have a positive impact on a college athlete. And I got to hang out with him for 30, 40 minutes before and after the race. So it was like a really cool, wholesome moment. But then there's that part of me that's like, okay, am I trying to figure out a way mentally to justify why losing isn't a big deal? And am I getting comfortable with losing? And so I have this internal back and forth all the time of trying to not put so much pressure on the result, but understanding that uh, I shouldn't just brush off a loss.
Hmm.
And the last thing I want to do is get comfortable with losing and just being like, okay, maybe it's just not something I should care about. Because I think that's a disease. That's a not a good mindset to have.
Hmm.
Um, but it's understanding what the ultimate goal is, and yeah, my ultimate goal during that wasn't to like win every single beer mile that I did. It was to have this, adventure to get to the Beer Mile World Classic.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard. I don't know. Winning and losing, those are losing especially is hard. And I've found that, and something I want to pick your brain on is like when you find success, and I know you were talking about how at Black Canyon there'll be 10 to 15 of the top runners will be sponsored. So there's something inherent that they have that you don't. So your hunger is still there to fight. But as you get more success and you have the things that you're going after, how do you stay hungry? Because for me, I've gone through this phase of like finding a ton of success and then getting to a point where I feel like I can rely on these past experiences to settle into wherever I'm at. And that's part of the reason I put Calendar Club back on the schedule for the month of October and maybe November and here on forth, for that reason of if I don't have this thing that's going to hold me accountable that I know I'm not going to want to do and I have to do it anyway, that is going to feed my accountability where the hunger might not be as great as it was at the beginning. So,
Hmm.
do you have a perspective on that of like
Yeah.
how you stay hungry or stay accountable when you find success?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because I guess for example, when I start to find success in, I'll just use my racing for example because it's my easiest way to translate what I'm going to say. But I went from a 2 or a 3, I don't know, 43 marathon or something to a 258 to a 250 to a 243, and each time I think I was successful in cutting off time and doing what I needed to do, no matter the course, no matter the conditions, no matter the weather, because of this positive pressure. And I'd say, like, I want to put emphasis on positive because I think pressure sometimes has a negative connotation and people like get
Mm.
squirmy and get away from it. But when I have this positive pressure of my wife, my friends, my family sacrificing their money, their time to come out and see me and to spend time with me and to like make a weekend or revolve everything around me for a day for my race, I feel like I need to step up to the occasion, no matter if I've been successful before, but knowing I've been successful in the past, like that's kind of expected by them too, that I'm going to be successful again. So knowing that in my head, like I feel more obligated each time to rise to the occasion and do what needs to get done. Um, I know that like in my head, like I don't I don't get comfortable with it ever because I know like once I get into the race setting, I feel those things and that's what I kind of channel. I'm like, Natalie's here for me. She spent all this money, or we spent all this money now that we're married. Um, my family spent all this money. We're sacrificing all this time. We're putting a lot into this, and they're dedicating themselves to me for this event. So I need to fulfill my side right now. I need to do what I need to do. I need to execute. I can't leave any stone unturned. I can't afford to not take a gel because I don't feel like it. Like I need to do what I need to do to stay on top of what I need to stay on top of for me to put myself in a position that leads to the best chances of me being successful. And I think in doing so continuously and event in, event out, I'm not feeling as much pressure anymore at all. It's just like, it's almost like what I do now and my routine and what I've kind of built in. I'm dedicated to others, and I know that this isn't an individual sport. This is still a team sport. I'm the person running. I'm the one person running, but I know how much other people are putting into this and how much other people are supporting me. So I know that I have to do what I need to do and not get comfortable um, during, after, before, at any time. So
That team sport aspect is something that I think I have learned, um, coming from a team sports background.
here we go with the segue. Let's go.
Yeah, he's calling me out for it. Coming from the team sport background and moving into more of the solo endeavor, that's something that I've had to adjust to is understanding that running isn't a solo endeavor if you don't want it to be.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and having your wife, having your friends, having your family show up for those are ways to incorporate the team sport. But um, and I think having the background of being in team sports has helped me identify like these are things that are needed. So
Nice segue.
um, yeah, what do you think? There's a lot of positives. I don't think of too many negatives when it comes from like coming from a sports or non-running background, then transitioning to being an ultra runner or a marathon runner. Um, what do you think you've noticed as some positives coming from a baseball background or just a non-running background that's helped you transition into becoming a runner?
Can I start with some negatives? I feel like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I know you said there probably isn't any, but one that I was kind of stewing on after we had gotten off the last recording when we were talking about this topic for this recording was that I I was successful enough in baseball to get an opportunity to play at the Division 3 level in college. I ended up not executing well enough and not getting any playing time on the varsity level there, and then ended up being cut from that team. So that led to me to be a bit bitter with the sport, my abilities, my lack thereof of abilities to perform. And I think that coming from this that background and seeing there are a lot of professional runners in the sport that came from the college running background and they were able to maintain that success. I'm not sure if it's my ego or something that I haven't quite fully accepted or wrestled with enough, but I think that I feel like I'm still upset with how I wasn't able to translate everything I had done for baseball up until that point into college and after. And looking at a lot of like the runners that are successful in the sport now, they had the track where they ran cross country middle school, they ran cross country in high school and track, they ran cross country and track in college, and after they were still able to continue that success. And that's something that I just had a disconnect with, and something that I don't know if it's necessarily a negative or a positive, but something that like it's hard for me to fully resonate and to be inspired by some of the runners that have been successful all their careers, or they were all Americans, or they were able to translate that success to pro running. And I think my perspective would be different if I was able to do that in baseball in my team sport. But with that being said, like I love to see, and this is something that Jim Walmsley said, so it's validated and it's certified. Like I love to see the grinders. I love to see the people that didn't come from the backgrounds that like are most conducive to them being successful to where they're at now. Like there's a rocky road where I think that we come from, where we can take a lot from what we've learned from these team sports that I think that you'll get into a lot more with your background in football and lacrosse. Um, and with that, like we're able to translate in some ways, but there's still like a through line of this running for, our lifetime miles. We don't have those lifetime miles yet, or that lifetime training that leads us to be as successful as maybe we think we could be. But on the other side of it, it's almost like a catch 22. Like we got some different training and different mental mental almost tests that have led us to be successful in this environment now. And I guess a positive of that is like an example I can think of in baseball. If you strike out 3 to 4 times in a game, like that feels like it's the end of
Yeah.
your world, and you need to be able to deal with that. Like there was times like after a game, I'd sit in my car after and like contemplate literally killing myself. I don't know if that's gonna be able to be bleeped out or not, but like I'd think about it because I'm like I'm putting so much into this. I'm
Mm.
doing all I can, and I'm still not seeing these results in some of these settings. And I think with like that back and forth of success and failure, and trying to communicate with your team that like you're not in a good spot, or you need someone to pick you up, or someone to you know go get a hit for you or make a play, and that'll like help the team. Like I think that has helped a lot to like I don't know, translate that over to running in some ways. But I know that you'll have a lot more to say on that. I just thought that I wanted to bring that up because that's something I thought of. Like I don't think I've you know, fully came to accept that I wasn't good enough in the sport that I dedicated my whole
Mm.
life to, and there was a point where I had to. I mean, I was forced to put it in the bag and almost retire from it. Um, and now that I'm seeing like people in the sport that I'm in now they've been successful their whole life through their whole careers, it's hard for me to exactly resonate with that, but I know that like it's possible for me to do the same in some ways. Like I can translate some of the things I learned from baseball.
So I mean, it sounds like the part of the negative is you haven't seen it modeled in a
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
But then you just said that you know you can be successful. Is that because you found success in other things, or is that just because you have this belief that you are going to find a way to get it done?
I think the latter part, and because I feel like this sport better aligns with my strengths than baseball
Yeah.
did. I don't think that baseball was really tapping into my athleticism, my ability to endure long bouts of, athletic events. Um, it was more of a highly skilled, highly tuned in repetition
Yep.
of certain things that I was good at. I was good enough to play in college at a certain level, but it wasn't my strength. And I guess a positive of this that we can lead into the positives is that now I know that for sure, and I know that to be certain of like what I like and what I'm good at and what I think my strengths are, and I've identified that, and I can translate that into running because I feel like it's the sport that is, aligns best. And now I'm fully aligned, and that I didn't have the years prior where I could have been burnt out and not totally understand the positives of running and the benefits of running, and potentially not even figuring out ultra running. Um,
Mm.
I feel like now I'm in a good position. So
Well, it's funny because that ties in where we started about like doing what you love is the things you find success in, and um, I think that with time and experience, maturity sets in where you
hmm
can have a better perspective on reflecting on that negative state of being in baseball and translating that now to the positive sides you've seen in running. Um, yeah, I the one negative that I thought of before we lead into positives is like the lack of structure. I remember
yeah,
being like, if you're in a sport, you have a practice time, and that's the time practice is. And you have all the different segments of practice already planned out. Whereas running, it is very free flowing where you could run at 8 in the morning, you could run at 3 in the afternoon, you could run at 10 o'clock at night. Like it's all up to you. So the structure and the accountability falls predominantly on the person, which I found to be very difficult and still find to be very difficult. Um, but as you alluded to, like the positive side, the athleticism and the strength that we took from the sports we played, people in running that ran in high school, ran in college, now it's growing now more than ever. I've seen a lot of coaches at the high school and college level talk more about strength work, but they're just not getting that. And so
yeah,
I don't know about you, but I rarely get injured. And I think a
yep,
lot of that has to do with the athleticism that was trained through repetition, through football and through lacrosse, but also the emphasis on strength work and making sure I utilize all the muscle groups available to go into a productive work session. Like that is something that takes years to build, and people on the back end are trying to catch up to that in running who just haven't had that their whole life.
yeah. And I think that durability is one of the main factors in
Yeah, great
allowing you
word.
in allowing you to be consistent, because you can be consistent all you want, but if there's an injury that pops up, that cuts everything off unless you're
Yeah.
able to handle it in good ways. But if it's something major, where say like you fracture your shin, or you have something that inhibits you from doing the running motion itself because you didn't have, you might have been overused, you might have not had that prior durability from the strength training or prior, athletic endeavors. Yeah, I think that's a good point, that something to think about if you're coming from a team sport, or if you don't have the experience in running and you want to get into it, like know that you do have some strengths that will translate and that will like pay dividends down the line and help you to be consistent. Like you have some factors in there that lead to good things for sure.
Well, and
Um,
and the high stakes of um like you talked about, and I'll bleep out maybe the word itself. We'll use unalive. That's a
yeah,
that's
that's
a
what it is. Yeah, I
that's
forgot
a
like the
TikTok and YouTube friendly
yeah
unalive.
yeah
Like the pressure that being up at the plate is a high stakes
oh dude
situation. There's so much pressure. There's so much contemplating, thinking, and as you said, like when you get in that mindset and you're failing consistently, that has some real repercussions on your mental state. And I don't feel like running has that level of like in the moment high stakesness. Now there's the suffering aspect where you're deep into a 100-mile race or whatever, and you're 80 miles in and everything hurts. And, there's decisions that need to be made in that situation. But being able to recognize and know that you can look back and say, I was in this really unhealthy mindset and I came out the other side, and now you have the perspective. I think that will help in those moments that get really low in running that other people just don't have the capacity to understand.
Yeah. And one thing that I have thought about over the years that just came to mind again in regard to this conversation was in baseball, a lot of the time, the plays I was making, the things I was doing was reactionary. And now in running and ultra running, I can actually initiate the reaction myself and be in more control of my own destiny. It's not someone else making the pitch to me, controlling everything that I can do initially. Like there's me with the freedom to act how I'd like to act without another force that's controlling the game in some way or another, which is very good for me because I don't necessarily like to be controlled. I don't like that feeling of someone else having their, over my shoulder or deciding what I do. So running
Well, this is the
allows
part
me-
of the show where we talk about election coming up. And
God. Oh man. Yeah.
No, but that that does bring
Oh
up a good
no.
point. Like
Oh God.
there is, you could run and I don't, maybe you should dive into this of like how much you thought about the competition during your grindstone race. There are games that are played mental. There's games that runners play with each other to try and like get an edge, but you could make the argument that you could not think about the runners, the other competitors, the entire race
No.
and still come out victorious.
Definitely. Yes. Like I would say 95% of the time that I would interact with someone, it was just because I wanted to talk to someone,
Yeah.
and I didn't care what place they were in. I didn't care what their goals were for the race in some regard, and how it involved me. Like I just wanted to keep running to the best of my ability and to maintain that pace. And it wasn't necessarily about like between us to a certain extent,
Right,
Like I
right.
was I was thinking more about Anton Krupicka and where he was just because I
Yeah.
wanted to be on the same podium as him. Like it
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
like
yeah.
not because I wanted to beat him, not because I wanted to lose to him, but just because like I wanted to share that moment with someone that's so legendary. It wasn't because I wanted to have a better race or I thought my race strategy was better than someone. So yeah, running leads you to almost choose your own adventure in some ways. Where like I could have went into that race saying like I want to pick off the next person within this amount of time, or if I see their headlamp, I'm gonna make a surge and then run with them for a bit and then make a surge so that they feel like they are in a bad spot, if
Yeah.
I'm moving so well. Like I could have done that and that could have worked, but like you can choose your own adventure and you can run with a person for 20 miles and share those miles, and that's what I did for a lot of the race up until it spread out so thin. But there's a lot of good things in running that allow you to not necessarily be controlled, but to control your own adventure and your own destiny if you so feel that obligated to. So
Yeah, and racing has many elements. I mean, you can race, you can crew, you can be a pacer for somebody.
oh oh.
I am
You
on
guys,
it, man.
you guys can't see this, but we have a sheet of an outline of kind of what we want to talk about for each episode, and when the next topic's coming because we're not the best of segueing it subtly.
Dude, we're
So,
we're we're on it.
All
They're
right.
on it.
So
We're
with
the
that
best in
being
the
said,
game.
yeah, this last weekend, what did you do? And tell us about that experience.
Yeah, I I paced Caius. He's one of our friends in his 100-mile race in Dubuque, Iowa, called Mines of Spain.
What have we done with Caius before?
So funny enough, I met Caius. The first time I met him, it was July during my year-long calendar club challenge. And I was just going out the back door, had a big mile run that day. And he was running along the Mississippi River with a stroller
It's
and
like a match made in heaven.
a match made in heaven. And you know the type. He had gauges in his ear, long hair, tattoos, and there was no child in the stroller. So I saw this guy is got to be my type of guy. So I circled back around and was talking to him for a mile or so, and he was in the middle of setting to FKT for the Grand Rounds Infinity Loop here in Minneapolis, which is 31 miles around St. Paul, 31 miles around Minneapolis. And then, so grew a relationship with Caius, and then Proctor and I beat that FKT
With his help.
with his help. Yeah, he came out and ran the first 30 miles around Minneapolis. Um, and yeah, so he came out and yeah, helped us beat his old FKT, which was super cool. And was it his birthday?
It was his birthday. He ran 32
Was it?
miles for his birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought so. So that was super cool. And Caius has done Mines of Spain now 3 times,
Wow.
maybe 2 or 3 times. Not his first rodeo there. It is a 20-mile loop, so you do that loop 5 times for the 100-mile. And yeah, that was my first time crewing. I got to see what it felt like from the other perspective of it was strange because so it started at 8 a.m. on Friday. I couldn't help him until he hit the 60-mile mark. And so there's just kind of like waiting around until I was able to step in. He finished that loop around 11. So then around 11:15 at night on Friday is when I stepped in, and we ran until 9 a.m. when he finished. And I just remember feeling during that first loop, I was getting exhausted, tired. I drove 4.5 hours that day, and I hadn't slept, and I was starting to get a little loopy, a little tired. But I was like, my job here is to not be tired. My job here is to make sure that he has all the energy possible from me. And so that was a different type of pressure that I was feeling. Was like, man, I gotta make sure that I am above and beyond on top of my game to make sure that I'm there for him. Um, one of the one of the things that I found cool was just learning his perspective on how he views running, because you and I have 2 different perspectives. We have a lot of similarities, but for him, like, he talked about how success for him is leaving it all on the course, leaving it all on the trail. Um, he's not a guy that is looking to win ultras. I mean, he would love to if that presented, but that's not his main goal. His goal isn't to like monetize or become a sponsored athlete. It's not to like build a social media presence. He just loves the adventure of being out there. And he talked a little bit about how growing up he played sports and how he felt like he wasn't the best athlete or wasn't like the first guy getting picked on the playground, and that left like a sour taste in his mouth about sports and about activity. And when he found running and trail running, he found similar to what you just said, is like he could take it into his own hands of his choose your own adventure mentality, and he's just found a love for it. Um, I the My favorite moment from that race is the last like half mile. Is you got to go straight up this hill. It's a paved path all the way to the top, and Caius was incredibly strong all day. when I got there, we did my first 20-mile loop with him was like 4.5, 5 hours.
Hmm.
And he was just consistent and solid all the way through. And the fifth lap, it just felt like each step he got stronger. Um, and he went from 51st to 22nd.
Nice.
So he's just crushing people. Um, people we were passing were walking or just like they were in zombie mode.
Hmm.
And um, that's the power of starting slow and finishing strong. But I remember we got to that last half mile, and he had told me earlier that when he did it the first time, his wife Ivy walked with him. She met him down at the bottom of the hill, and they just walked all the way to the top because he was pretty beat up. And when we got to the bottom of the hill, we were cruising there and starting to pick up speed. I'm like, all right, so we're gonna keep this pace up that hill, right? He's like, I'll do my best. I'll do my best, but no promises. And as we turned that corner, I'm like, all right, so it's time to lock in. And I gave him a scenario of something that I like to reflect on is, you know, this is how I started with him. I said, because he wants to be a dad. And
Oh.
one of the things that I've used in the past is like, if I want to be a dad, there's going to be a point in time in my life where my son or daughter will be going through a hard time and they will seek my advice. And I have a choice in that situation, or I have a choice leading up to that situation to do the work to put myself in uncomfortable situations, to have lived experience to provide them in that situation, or I can go to Google or ChatGPT and pull motivational quotes off the internet that won't land as well because I haven't had that lived experience. And so we were just the whole way up talking about that, motivating him through more that language, and he ran the whole way up that hill, and it was
That's
just
cool.
you could just feel that halfway up that hill, he was in pain and looking for the top of that hill and just refocus down at that next step. And it was a one of the cooler moments that I've been a part of in running because you could feel the pain that he was in, yet he was just continuing to go regardless. And
Hmm.
that is what I think of as success in running is like when you're suffering, how do you respond to that? And
Hmm.
I couldn't be more proud of him. I told him I'd crew you anytime because of that effort and because of what I saw out of you out there. Um, so yeah, those are kind of my takeaways from the weekend of just like so proud of him, and it was cool to be on the other side of things where I could give back to someone doing something that people have given. I mean, he's given back to me in that way too. So it's just cool to be able to be on the other end of things.
Yeah, it's. I had that same experience when I paced my friend this May. When you're not the man in the arena, but you're the
Yeah.
one like serving your brother or your sister, there's this feeling that you almost like you feel it's a lot more fun, first of all, because you don't have to suffer, you don't have to go through the
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
um in that moment it's a lot more fun to be on the outside as like a third party and almost like a news reporter running by these people that are going to the well. But yeah, I think that from that experience that I had as well, I learned a lot about how I want to run and how I want to
Mm,
push through the pain, and to see that from the outside, like how I could present myself when I'm in that situation, so that my pacers or my family like gets a better understanding of what I'm feeling and how to meet my needs, or
yeah.
so it's cool to like get that perspective and to help someone out like that, because you feel so good after, because they were able to like they were able to achieve their goal and you were able to play a part in it.
Yeah.
And when you are the man in the arena and you are the one doing it, it's easy, and it's almost our human nature to feel selfish about it, because
Yes.
we know what we're doing is something that, you know, we are choosing to do. We are roping in other people to help us with. So it is in that moment, like we know it's about us. So when you're on the other side, you can see that the people that, you know, truly care about you and truly love you and want to be there for you don't see it like that.
Mm,
And they just see it as a
yeah.
means of helping you and loving you and caring for you and wanting to see you see these goals through. So that's kind of like helped me to almost gain that perspective that I didn't have before, because before when I was doing these races, my marathons, I never, you know, watched or supported someone else's marathon before, like personally, like individually. Um, so doing that for a friend, crewing and pacing him in a 100-mile race at elevation in the 80-degree heat, like I realized like all he had to go through and all the things that he may be thinking, and I wanted to do whatever I could. I would have put my body down on the line for this guy because I knew like what he was embarking on, and the the I was gonna say I was gonna say something explicit. The bravery it took to go through with it. So if you haven't paced or crewed someone before, or even gone to support someone for, you know, a race itself, I think I think it's definitely something that makes you feel super good, and something that um, the people racing will really appreciate. And um, there's nothing really bad about it. You know, maybe it's the sleep deprivation, maybe it's that you kind of have to fend for yourself and figure out what you're supposed to do with all this time in between when you're seeing them, or what you're going to eat, or, you know, what you're going to talk about with fellow people in the crew or family members for that long time. But when you're doing it, just know that it's so appreciated by the other person that you are doing it, and that, you know, the bond that you're going to have afterward is so strong and, I don't know, thoughtful and meaningful, that it will go beyond that race. And, you know, it could be a lifelong thing that you may not have even realized beforehand. So
Yeah, that perspective that you get, that you can then bring into when you're the person in the arena, I think is crucial because I don't know, it helps me feel less like I'm burdening people to ask for the
yes,
help, and
that's a good word.
it opens you up to asking for help because I got so much out of this weekend. I had so much fun this weekend. And yes, I was there to help Caius and to help him succeed in his goal, but I gained so much personally and selfishly by being there. Um, and I think that's something that we forget when we're always the one that's asking people for help, is we forget that they're there because they want to be, and they're there because they want to help us succeed. And they're by them being there, like them wanting to be there, they get so much out of it too. They get an experience that they otherwise wouldn't have had, and that really does tie into the team aspect that everyone has a role, um, and the greater goal at play is, you know, whether it's finishing the race or winning the race, like everybody has a role to help that goal come to life.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of ties back to our our conversation about goals. And say if you're listening to this and you're a permanent crew member, that you're not doing any of these running events, you're not doing any of the athletic endeavors, you're, you know, you're solely there to crew, you're solely there to pace and help. There are different goals that you can set for yourself to, you know, in times that maybe you're not as motivated, you're not as happy with it, or maybe things are going bad. There are goals that you can set for yourself. Maybe you want to be at an aid station or a crewable spot at a certain time beforehand, like 20 minutes beforehand, just so that you're prepared and ready to go. Maybe you want to make sure that your 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 racer or your athlete is in and out of an aid station in a certain time, and you are the vehicle to that allows them to do that.
yep.
Like that's those are some ways that can like help you, you know, feel good about what you're doing, and like almost have like bigger goals that lead to more success on your end too. So I know like my mom will be listening to this and she wants to crew my races down the road. Like those are a few things that like you can think about when you're crewing me. Like there's just like certain you could lay out my gels in a certain way, or you could have my I'm just saying, like, there's gonna be people listening to this that
Yeah.
aren't athletes at all, aren't racers. So like, people don't talk about the other perspective enough
Yeah.
and what's to be done. Like people always talk about all the science between like the nutrition for the athlete, the hydration, like their training, but people don't really talk about what it takes to be a good crew member and a good pacer, and kind of leaves a lot to be almost um, thought about on the fly, which leads to I don't know. It leads to some negative outcomes if you're not prepared, if you don't feel like you've done a good enough job. So that's kind of I want to lead into that, and I know
I,
my mom will be listening, so she'll appreciate that. And she, yeah,
I I think we should bring on. Uh, I think it'd be interesting to pick the mind of someone who's crewed a bunch of races, and
mm-hmm,
for them to come on and share that experience, because that is something that typically isn't talked about a lot, and that perspective uh, has so much valuable information in it, that I think would be helpful for us to share.
yeah, it's just like it's another role on the team
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
as is essential as the runner themselves. So if you think of like a basketball team, that could be like the point guard, like they're directing you, they're pointing you in the right direction, they're setting you up for success, and you're just like the shooter. You're out there trying to make the shots, and they're doing whatever they can, putting the ball in the right spot for you to shoot it as efficiently,
right.
setting you up for plays where you're the most open, drawing in the defense. It's like they're doing what they can on their end to set you up for success. And I think that a lot of times it's not talked about enough, how to be successful in that position, on some of these shows and some of these podcasts. So I think that'd be a great
Yeah.
idea.
Should we get into some ultra news?
Yeah, I think that you should take this one away because I'm not
Yeah.
as in tune with
Th-
it.
This is more of the ultra running world. Ned Brockman just completed 1,000 miles around a track in Australia. It took him 12 days, 13 hours, 16 minutes, and 46 seconds. He was averaging 79 miles a day. And I was doing a little bit of research to bring perspective on. First, this is really cool, which I think what Ned is doing is really powerful and impactful and like digestible to the everyday person to incorporate into the things that he's doing. So he's currently doing Ned's Uncomfortable Challenge, and it's all in an effort to raise money for homelessness in Australia. That's his big overarching mission. And so he started this uncomfortable challenge by doing his big, massive 1,000 miles around a track. That was from the 1st of October to the 13th. And then for the next 2 weeks, he has challenged people to take on their own uncomfortable challenge and to raise money. And so I thought that was super cool. I saw some people were doing like a 5K a day, or not using any hot water for those 2 weeks. So showers, washing hands, food, like everything was strictly cold water. So it's another testament to like it's a choose your own adventure, choose your own challenge. And that looks different for everybody. He had a quote that I want to share that I thought would be fun to talk about. This was after he finished. He said, "I just never could have imagined it to be this bad, and I'm forever grateful for it all. Wouldn't have changed an effing thing. Post-traumatic growth coming right up." And it's that last sentence that I thought we could talk about, is post-traumatic growth coming right up. What does that mean to you?
I mean it means a lot in the moment when you're going through the trauma, but actually reflecting on it and thinking of what you went through, I think leads to more transferable skills, transferable perspectives. So I guess, for example, when I was running the Grindstone 100, things got hard at mile 80. I was going through trauma for about 26 miles. And then afterward, I was still feeling that trauma, but I was able to kind of get my thoughts in order and decide what I wanted to keep in my memory, what I wanted to, forget about. And with that, and in that process, I was able to like determine like what things could help me grow more and what things are almost taking away from not only that moment but going forward. And I think a lot of people go into things thinking that they're just gonna get, you know, they're just gonna get the good things from it, the positives, but you can learn a lot from all the negatives, all the pain you went through. Personally, there's a lot of things in my life that I wish hadn't happened to me. Within my family, that affected me personally growing up, and I wish they wouldn't have happened, but I wouldn't be the man I am today without those things, and I wouldn't stand for what I stand for now without those things in my life. So I think in those moments when you're going through something hard, know that no matter what, it is making you better in some way. And after the circumstance is over, which, everything will end eventually, you can choose to get even more out of it by how you react to it and how you align your values and morals after it and what you decide to do after it. I think can lead to even more exponential growth. So yeah, there is trauma there in the moment. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, you're gonna be in pain, no matter if it's physical, mental, spiritually. But on the other side, there's a lot more in store for you, and it's based on how you react to what you went through. So I think that last sentence, post-traumatic growth coming right up, means that he's looking forward to that because he's done enough hard things that he realizes that, yeah, he went through all this crap, but he knows that he's going to be a better man because of it, and he's going to be able to do better things because of it. It might put a hamper on his life. Maybe he's not going to be able to run the same again because he got so injured from this, but he's going to have some new perspective, and he's going to be able to, he's doing it now. He's able to funnel it down to other people to affect more lives and in turn make the world a better place. So that's really inspiring, and I guess I didn't know the entire story, so it's cool to hear about that and know that there's other people that are trying to do the same things in different ways.
Yeah, I think it emphasizes the choice trauma versus the stuff that happens to us.
Yes.
And this is why I love choosing the hard and choosing those difficult experiences, because this is a guy that chose to do something so incredibly difficult that he put his mind, his body, his spirit through hell. But he knows that on the other side of that, there's going to be a lot of clarity, peace, joy, growth, as he put in his own words. There's going to be all of those things because of being in that hard moment. And it's difficult when we don't choose to put ourselves in those situations, and because we lack that understanding that this actually is benefiting us. I think it takes a lot longer to understand the things that happen to us, because we can sometimes feel like a victim, and there are definitely cases where we are. Like, I'm not downplaying that, but I think when we take a step back and we choose to do difficult things, we learn that trauma and bad things that happen to us can come out to be an incredibly positive experience, in the same way that you said, like, it's how we choose to move forward, because you can't change the past, and all things will come to an end. All pain and suffering will come to an end. And when we take a step forward and we face it and we head right into it, we learn that we're much more powerful than that trauma, than that experience, than that hardship. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up. That was an incredible effort. He was trying to set the FKT for 1,000 miles around a track, which was 10 days. He didn't accomplish it, but
That's
it
crazy in
even
itself. Yeah.
even furthers the point of like, even when you don't hit your one of your goals, it doesn't mean that you should stop. It's the same way when I brought up the marathon runners who didn't get the cutoff time. It doesn't matter. You had a commitment to seeing it through no matter what. And that is what I am looking at this being like the coolest part of that story is just kept going.
Yeah.
So
That is cool. Yeah, I think that we all in some way have like a vision or an idea of who we want to be or the man or woman who we want to be. And I think choosing to have purposeful trauma in your life is a fast track way to become that person. You know, I think there's always a person that we want to be that we won't ever be, but getting closer and continuing like on that path like can easily be accelerated by choosing to do the hard things and to see things through like this. So
all right, so back end of the show, we got some updates here.
I thought we are gonna go into the and in contrary to that, not
Yeah.
choosing to do hard things. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
We can run through these. Any updates in your training? You're on what, week 3 now?
Going on week 3. Week 2 was sort of a doozy. Wasn't really supposed to be, but I did a bit more than was planned or scheduled by Hayden, and that was mostly because I had met uh, many great training friends this week, and with that, like we wanted to run more together, and we felt the
Yeah.
connection, and so we chose to run on Sunday when I was supposed to have a cross training day, and on Monday when I was supposed to be either off or doing like an hour of easy stuff. I chose to go with my new training buddies and share that experience and create a better bond. And I don't regret it. It led me to feeling a bit overstimulated and sick yesterday. But I got a good night's rest last night, feeling good. Had about 65 miles last week, 11 hours of training, and I think over 10,000 feet of vertical gain. So
Nice.
back on track to been my average for this summer and going into fall for where I'm like most comfortable at. So feeling good with this base building phase. I got 2 more weeks of that, and then we'll get into some real speed work. So feeling pretty good. How have you been feeling about Calendar Club, and how manageable has it been this time around to get the miles in, given where you're at in life?
I'm starting to heat. So today, actually, I'll hit the halfway point in miles, which is wild to think that half the miles come in the last 9 or 10 days of the month. It has been the reason I hate and love Calendar Club is because it's manageable enough where I know I can do it no matter what my schedule is, because I've done this while working a full-time job. I've done this while working a full-time job during the holidays. And so I know I know it's manageable. It gets really hard during the back end
Yeah.
of the month.
Which I think that can be like a good thing and a bad thing, because it
Yeah.
it gives you literally no excuse, because
I know.
you've done more with less,
Yeah.
almost, or done the same with less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the hardest days so far has been Sunday, where, coming back off of minimal sleep from the weekend, from pacing, and then 4.5 hour drive on Sunday, and then getting out for a 20-mile run. I started at 6:15, didn't finish till 12:45 in the morning. So it's starting to get to that point where I really have to prioritize. I'm really bad at getting out the door, and I wait until 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I just can't do that. So now it's just like, I think what I'm going to start doing this week is splitting up the runs into like
was
a
gonna
10-mile
ask.
run. And
Yeah.
I think it's the 22nd. So I might do 2 11-mile runs. So it's just, things pop up on the schedule, and I just got to start making a priority around getting out the door earlier in the day.
Yeah.
So,
But with that being said, our schedules are in a good position right now to take on any sponsorship obligations or commitments.
good segue. Good segue.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, I mean, I think you brought up a good point with splitting the mileage up. I was going to ask you if you were doing that because I think it'd be easy to, chip away here and there. Sometimes it's hard to fit in a 6, 7, 8 hour block of time
yeah.
in your day. So splitting up in halvesies or triples could be pretty nice and a good way to break up your day in some way to like almost segue into a new portion that of your day that you're wanting to get certain things done or
Yeah.
have certain goals for yourself. I think that'd be pretty good because I know in the past you've done it's that way before in some ways, but I don't know how intentionally you were with doing it. I know like both me and you, like we usually just kind of spur the moment, just decide what we're gonna do, and then like, oh, we're gonna go for it. All right,
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do all 25 miles now.
Yep.
But I guess with all this time on our hands, like we are in a good position to be sponsored by some brand that's interested in us, and we are very motivated and driven to fulfill any of those obligations. But I guess with that being said, a positive that came from Grindstone was meeting someone out there that is a sponsored athlete, and he's sponsored by many brands, and he was nice enough after a conversation that we had on the trail to put me in contact with one of the brand marketers or athlete managers that he had been connected with and is manages him. And I just thought that was really cool, and it's a cool opportunity because today that was the race was September 20th. He probably reached out to them in a few days following after we'd recovered, and it's about a month later now, and I just got a follow on Instagram from this person, which is really cool to know that this the runner that I'd been running with followed up. He
Yeah.
did something. He went out of his way to do something really nice for me when I had put my goals out there, and he realized how authentic and genuine I was, and how driven I was, and goal oriented I was. So he wanted to do his part to push the envelope forward, and I think he probably realized he needed some help along the way, and he realizes how hard it is for brands to talk with you these days, and to realize how hard it is to even get a brand to understand exactly what they want in an athlete or a partnership. And him kind of laying a little bit of groundwork and helping me get my foot in the door really meant a lot, and something that I'll continue to follow up on and message this individual and see if there's any connection there. I know we're getting to the end of the year, which is usually contract season, and usually when deals are made and finalized for the next year to few years. So we have a bit of a time window here to capitalize on. So I want to take advantage of that. And we're still planning on going to, at least I am still planning on going to the Running Expo, the running event in Austin, Texas. I'm still waiting on approval for this credit card to do that. Don't necessarily need it for the funds. We just want to kind of build up my credit and get the travel bonus for the certain amount of spend there. But waiting on that to spend it on the running event and the flight for that. And my goal is to make some connections with some brands there, and to show my face and show people who I am in person, and have some meaningful conversations about where I see myself going, how I align with certain companies' values, and what value I can bring to their company, and what problems I can solve, whether it's as an athlete, whether it's as an employee, or both in some way or another. So that's still the plan as of now. Have you had any more thoughts on that, or have
Yeah.
you decided whether or not you will go?
I will not go. I just don't think it's in the cards for me financially, nor I think that's one of the bigger things for me right now. Is
Mm-hmm.
it's just not in the cards for me financially. But what I will say is on, you know, it's a great opportunity, and I think from your story, it we talked about in a previous episode of how important it is to be in the places where the people you want to connect with are going to be, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happened for you. um, but yeah, it's not in the cards for me financially. The other thing I will say is um, getting your foot in the door in any way is like that's something that I am trying to do a better job of because of how long it takes. Like from you said September 20th is when you met him. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
full month since then and you've made progress, but like that's a long time. Like it's a full
Yeah.
month, right? And so
Yeah. And that's
it's
just to get
important.
him to know of
Right.
me, not
Yes.
who I am, but of me.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
And so it's just like, yeah, that's something I got to get on today. Is just starting to put uh, more lines in the water, more lines
Yeah.
in the water.
Exactly. Yep. Give yourself more opportunities and chances because there are a lot of things that we can dictate on our own, and you know, a lot of times, I want to believe that I'm just gonna get an email one day
Yeah, dude,
or a phone call
it's
where
not happening.
someone's gonna reach out, but that's not the way it is. Unless you are, unless you are, you know, Jim Walmsley or Courtney DeWalter, um, you have to do a lot of the groundwork for yourself and realize that it is a long road. But as we continue to venture down this path, we'll continue to, help to lay that groundwork for you and, lay out some steps and some of the things and strategies that we're enacting and acting on, um, to make our dreams come true and our goals come true, for not only us, but for the future generations of athletes, and to almost pay it forward as we go on, because eventually we will be in a position that we've reached some of our goals, in a position to set others up for success more, and we really want to be able to do that. um, so that's the goal of this podcast in one way or another, and we'll continue to do our best to communicate it with you guys. And if you're listening closely, there might be some good tips in there for you to even act on in your everyday life that's not entirely related to running itself, but just to live a decent life like we're trying every day. Like, we fall short a lot of times. We don't fulfill our promises. We sin, we aren't perfect people, but we're trying and we're working through things together, and that's all you can really ask for. Like, we're trying our best, and it's not normal to be perfect, and we're not trying to be
Right,
perfect,
right.
but we're just two dudes with a podcast.
Two dudes with a podcast.
Yeah, and I think with
Um,
that, like, do you want to wrap it up here and we can get into our next topic on the next podcast, or
I was gonna suggest that too. I think that's a great place to land this plane.
let's land this sucker? So thank you guys. We appreciate you all for listening and sticking with us through episode 3 here. And if it's your first time listening, we appreciate you tuning in and checking us out, and we hope to have you stick around for the next one. So episode 3, October 22nd of the Ultra Ascent podcast. Let's go. The plane is landing.